Floridians think they know what lives in their water. The gator in the retention pond, the python in the sawgrass, the iguana that drops out of a tree on a cold morning. They've made peace with all of it. But there is a new shape moving through the canals, working north toward Orlando now, 7 feet of African predator that was never supposed to be here at all. It has a name most people in central Florida have never said out loud: the Nile Monitor. And the U.S. Geological Survey has already handed it a title that should stop you cold: the largest and most dangerous non-native lizard established anywhere in the United States. Not the python, not the iguana. This. Before we go any further, if you like the kind of story that makes you look twice at the water behind your own neighborhood, take a second to subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel. And I want to know one thing while you're here. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your town in the comments. I love seeing how far these reach. Now let's get into it. Start with what it actually is. The Nile Monitor is the longest lizard in all of Africa. A cousin of the Komodo dragon, built on the same blueprint: a long, muscular body, a whip of a tail, hooked claws, and a mouthful of backward curving teeth. In its homeland, it patrols the riverbanks from Egypt to South Africa. A big one in Florida stretches past 7 feet and weighs more than 20 pounds, roughly the size of a medium dog. Except this one runs at 18 miles an hour, climbs trees, and can hold itself underwater for a quarter of an hour without surfacing. None of that is supposed to be here. So how does an African river lizard end up in a Florida canal? The answer is the same quiet mistake behind almost every one of Florida's invasions: the pet trade. Nile monitors are one of the most common African monitors sold in American reptile shops, and people buy them small, a foot-long hatchling in a glass tank. What the price tag never mentions is that the foot-long hatchling becomes a 7-foot carnivore that needs live food and carries a genuinely bad temper. So the ones that outgrew their owners got turned loose. Others simply escaped: a poorly latched cage, a hurricane that peeled the screen off an enclosure, and slipped away into the nearest waterway. The first free-living Nile monitors were spotted around Cape Coral on Florida's Gulf Coast back in 1990, and Cape Coral turned out to be, from the lizard's point of view, close to paradise. A whole city laced with hundreds of miles of freshwater and saltwater canals, dispersal corridors running in every direction, banks soft enough to dig into, and prey waiting at the end of every one. The population settled in and never left. 3 decades later, Cape Coral crews have pulled close to 800 of them out of those same neighborhoods, and the state now recognizes established breeding populations in Lee, Palm Beach, and Miami-Dade counties. Here is what makes this animal different from the iguana Floridians have learned to shrug at. The iguana eats your hibiscus. The Nile Monitor eats. Its diet reads like an inventory of everything native Florida is trying to protect: crabs, crayfish, fish, frogs, snakes, turtles, birds and their eggs, small mammals, chickens, the occasional unlucky cat. But its favorite food, the one it hunts by instinct, is eggs: bird eggs, snake eggs, turtle eggs, and the eggs of crocodilians. In Africa, the Nile Monitor is one of the few animals that will raid a crocodile nest and eat the young. In Florida, that exact appetite points straight at the American crocodile and the alligator, whose eggs and hatchlings are precisely the sort of thing a monitor was built to steal. And then there are the burrowing owls. Cape Coral holds the largest population of these little ground nesting owls in the entire state, 9-inch birds that lay their eggs in shallow burrows out in the open ground. To a Nile monitor, a field of burrowing owls is not a threatened species. It's a buffet, laid out at exactly the right height in exactly the kind of dirt the lizard likes to dig. And it doesn't stop at the eggs. The monitor takes over the burrows themselves, the same burrows the owls and the threatened gopher tortoise depend on to survive. Now understand why you can't simply trap the problem away. A single female Nile monitor can lay anywhere from a dozen to 60 eggs in one clutch. 60. That is not a pest you thin out. That's a population that replaces itself faster than crews can pull the adults out of the canals. Biologists who study Florida's invaders have a flat, grim way of describing what happens once monitors take hold near permanent water. Very difficult, if not impossible, to eradicate. Which brings us back to Orlando. For years, the Nile monitor was a South Florida and Gulf Coast story, a coastal animal riding coastal canals. But the sightings have started climbing the map. Wildlife officials have now logged Nile monitors in counties well outside the established zones, and among the places individual monitors have already turned up is Orange County, the county Orlando sits in. Right now, officials often can't tell whether a given Central Florida sighting is a single escaped pet or the leading edge of something taking root. That uncertainty is the whole problem, because the thing state biologists say they fear most is not the population they're already fighting on the coast. It's the day these lizards establish themselves in Central Florida, a landscape stitched together with lakes, retention ponds, drainage canals, and warm, diggable ground, threaded straight through the middle of one of the fastest-growing metro areas in the country. That's the part that should land. A Nile monitor doesn't need wilderness. It needs water it can swim, banks it can dig, and eggs it can find. And Greater Orlando is built out of all three. The canal that drains a subdivision is a highway. The retention pond behind the office park is a hunting ground. The lizard doesn't see the line between the wild and the built any more than the alligator does. So here is what this story is really about. Not a monster. The Nile monitor isn't hunting people, and it would rather disappear into a canal than face you. It's about how quietly a 7-foot African predator can move into a place that already decided it knows exactly what lives there. Florida cataloged its dangers a long time ago: the gator, the python, the iguana on the cold morning, and closed the book. The monitor is the line nobody wrote in. It came in through a pet shop door. It spread through the canals nobody thinks about. And it is working its way north now, one waterway at a time, toward a city that has no idea it's coming. The water behind the subdivision looks the same as it did last summer. It always does. That's exactly the point. It tells you almost nothing about what has started, very patiently, to move through it.